Dieter, some years ago, you had a near-death experience. Can you tell me how this came about? Yes, in fact, this was exactly on April 25th of 2013, and I had what they call sleep apnea. Some people say apnoe, but that is correct also. And this expression derives from the Greek, and it means a respiratory arrest, which lasts perhaps 30 seconds, 2 to 3 minutes. And it happened in my home, in my bedroom. What was the consequence of this respiratory arrest? The consequence was that I had this near-death experience. And this happened as follows. I didn't know where I was. Everything was bright, pastel, cordial. I even cannot say if there were any walls or not. In any case, it was an abstract ambiance, no landscape. And then there was this friend standing there, Laura. She looked great. She died when she was 47, and now she looked as if she was 28 or 30 years old. She was dressed in a white vest, and she was barefoot. When I saw her, I couldn't help but laugh. I just shook with laughter, because during her lifetime, she never would have worn things like that. She rather used to wear funky dresses. She just looked at me and indicated on a spiritual level, get a good look at yourself. And then I got a good look at myself and realized that I also was wearing a white vest and that I was barefoot. And then I immediately thought to myself, damn, now you're dead. I mean, you finally realized this. But this didn't scare me. I asked myself, how did I get here? Why did I die? Well, okay, I mean, things are as they are. And then she gave me her left hand, and we approached a bright light. Similar to this lampshade, it did not dazzle. It was a soft light, which had a magical and magnetic attraction, emanating warmth and love. You simply feel sheltered. Together, we approached this light, and I was surprised that I couldn't see any ground, because everything was soft like cotton wool. But I have never walked on cotton wool. And so later, I said in an interview with a psychology student that it was like walking on Otzi sand, because Otzi sand is also soft. And this is something I know, and because nobody can walk on cotton wool. We came closer and closer to the light, and we felt more and more terrific. We were totally overwhelmed, and then something strange happened. I had the feeling as if somebody would fill my body with warm water from the top of my head. My body felt like a hollow, and the warm water rose from my feet and gradually filled my body upwards. This was an indescribable feeling, and I thought, wow, this really is absolute madness. And then I came back to my senses. Then again, I did not know where I was. The light was shining through the shutters. My face was wet with my tears, and I asked myself where I was. Then I closed my eyes and tried to go back to this place where I came from. But this, of course, did not go smoothly. This was, to begin with, the experience which I had to cope with. It was 5 a.m., and I couldn't fall asleep again because I was completely absorbed by this experience. This was so gigantic, and I couldn't comprehend it. Let us come back to this encounter with your friend. Did you recognize her immediately? Yes, immediately. She looked great and much younger, as if she was in the prime of her life, like 28 or 30 years old. But clearly visible? Of course. Yes, clearly visible. What I was surprised about afterwards is that the handshake was normal. Today, this is logical for me, because when a spirit being and a human being meet, the spirit being would penetrate through the human being. But when spiritual beings are among themselves, it is the same as when human beings are among themselves. You take the feelings with you into the spirit world, and this was just the same firm handshake as here on earth. Did you believe in the beyond before your near-death experience? Well, of course, I'm a Protestant, and in the confirmation classes, I was taught about the church, but I didn't have any firm idea about it. I really didn't concern myself with this issue. My parents had in their library the book by Raymond Moody, Life After Life. Later, I could clearly recollect the picture on the cover of it because I bought the book again for myself, and I realized that I know it, but I just didn't have any memory of it. In the past, I never thought about things like this. As far as life after death was concerned, my idea was that one falls into a sort of limbo, or perhaps that life goes on somehow. But I didn't have any precise conception about that. Tell me, what impact did this near-death experience have on your future life? It has changed everything. For 3 days, I ran around and didn't know how to organize myself. I was completely out of order. Then I told my wife about this, and she of course replied, "You're crazy. You are crackers." But at some point, she began to realize, you have a point there. By accident, we discovered in a magazine a report on the book by Sabine Menne, Light Without Shadow. Then I picked up the magazine again, and I found the reference to the Near-Death Experience Organization. I bought her book, and I read it very quickly within 3 hours. This book is very interesting, and I found in it many elements of my own near-death experience. I'd say my attitude, I have become more tolerant, you see things differently, nothing is so important. Tangibles are not important for me. Let me give you an example. Yes, it's nice to have a car to get from A to B, but it doesn't really matter what type of car it is, and things like that or tangibles are no longer valuable for me. One is more generous toward other people who do things you actually cannot understand. And you just think, well, let them do what they want. I don't mind. You change your attitude toward things. Yes, completely. How do you process your near-death experience today in the aftermath of this experience? 2.5 months after this near-death experience, I gave my first interview to a student. Then some other interviews followed, and 11 months after the near-death experience, I gave my first talk by means of a PowerPoint presentation. And meanwhile, I have done 15 talks, and today's interview is the 10th. I feel that with each interview and each talk and the intensive pursuit of this issue, I can process the problem better. This gives me tremendous support. At that time, I believed that all people are the same as I, because I didn't know anybody who had had a near-death experience. And then I thought to myself that everybody would react as I did. But then I realized that, to the contrary, most people hide away. They don't speak about this because they don't want to disgrace themselves. They are afraid to be laughed at by others, and so on. People always looked at me when I talked to them about this, when I told them that now I had given my 3rd talk and my 2nd interview. And they say, "What do you mean?" I said to them that I would speak openly about this and that I wouldn't have any problem doing so. To the contrary, I feel how I can process this experience, and that is what seems to be unusual. What is your most important understanding from this near-death experience? How did you benefit from it? I realized that life goes on and death does not finish it. You go back to the place where you came from. I often lie awake, and if you then think over this issue, I'd say, I think that we are spiritual beings coming from this spiritual world. We get a terrestrial body for the time on earth, and then we go back as spiritual or ethereal beings, whatever you want to call it. I have read an adage in a book by a French philosopher which exactly coincides with this conception. Thus, you somehow feel confirmed. This also makes sense somehow, and referring to this after-death experience, I was concerned with the whole surrounding field, and now I am also looking into reincarnation. Everything lines up marvelously. As Pim van Lommel, the Dutch author, says, this consciousness continues, independent of the brain and the body, and we continue on, and this also makes sense with respect to reincarnation, I am not in fear of anything, neither of death nor of anything else. At the grammar school, I sometimes joke with the pupils. The only thing I'm afraid of is opening the fridge in the evening and seeing there is no beer. Thank you so very much for the interview.